Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time slot you're in. My name is Amir, Abdul Jaleel, and we're here at Sunuker FM Radio, the first African radio show in California, Los Angeles. And we are here continuing the topics that we need to talk about today for our people in Africa, for our people in America, for our people in Brazil, for our people in Haiti, for our people in Somalia. All over the world, African people are suffering today. A lot of it is internal. A lot of it, we are killing each other. We're killing ourselves in South Central Los Angeles, in Chicago, in the inner city. So we want to work on solutions. We want to work on not just talking about the problem, but we want to work on the solution. How could we train ourselves? How could we educate ourselves? How could we mobilize as a people? How could we be in control of our economic? African people in the United States, African American people, are worth over, some experts say, $1 trillion a year in terms of the money that we bring with LeBron James, with Oprah Winfrey, with Russell Simmons, all the different entertainers. But yet, if you look in the inner city, we're still suffering because we have yet to put up supermarkets. We have yet to put up grocery stores. We have yet to put up our own universities, our own hospitals, and even our school system. The prison industrial complex is benefiting from our miseducation. If you commit a felony and you end up in prison, it costs the state $60,000 a year to keep you there. And most people that go to prison can't get a job making $30,000 a year. If you're a youth and the Child Protective Services take you from your home, it's $322,000 per year. So there's a lot of problems. We're in the election year. This is 2016. We're in the election year, and we're seeing all these politicians talking about different things. Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, these different Barry Sanders, and black people are at a crossroads because we don't know what to do. My professor explained it to me, to our classroom, in this way. He said the Republican Party doesn't offer us anything because they know that we're Democrats and we're not going to vote for them anyway. The Democrat Party doesn't offer us anything because we're already Democrats and they know we're going to vote for them anyway. So we end up losing either way. So being that it is an election year, it's very important for us to talk about what's going on internationally, what's going on locally, these shootings, these different things that are happening. Me personally, I love the analogy that Malcolm X described in 1964 when he gave the famous speech called The Ballot or the Bullet. And it's very important for people to decide, if you are going to be a voter, if you are going to participate in the electoral process, what are you prepared to do if that process fails you? For instance, there was a year when Judd Bush, George Bush's brother in Florida, didn't allow the black people to come to the polls. And that election still went on, and the country still functioned without the aid of the votes in that state. And the black people voting in that election, the election probably would have swung to the Democratic Party. So there's a lot of issues that we need to, just talk about. Previously, we talked about education. To me, education and economics will always be one of the things that we talk about. And we hope to partner with different organizations and different people, and to make this radio program a reality, TV program, and to do other things. We are an independent people today, but yet we still operate with a mentality that we're second-class citizens. So we want you to call the radio station. We want you to tune in. We want you to have questions. We want you to have tough questions. I was listening to a radio program, KJLH, Los Angeles, the front page, two mornings ago, and the sister, she was a lecturer. I think she was a professor at Cal Poly Pomona University, and she said that in the Jim Crow South, from maybe in the early 1900s all the way until, let's say, 1950, there was a lot of lynching. The police department were killing, black men, but they did an average, and they said on an average one black man per week were being killed by the police department. Now, recently in 2016, the number is two black men per week killed by the police department. Those are staggering numbers in this day and time. Also, we have black on black violence, in the inner cities, with gang violence. And gang violence, we call it gang violence, but in one sense, some friends of mine, we are discussing tribal violence, like what's happened in Somalia, what's happened in Rwanda, what's happened in other places. So you can call it tribal violence, you can call it gang violence, however you want to label it. It's black on black, and it's very problematic. We call it genocide, we call it homicide, whatever title we give it, we attach to it. The reality is there's a lot of us being killed, and it's affecting our potential. When you look at the entertainment industry today, when you look at some of the movies or some of the shows like Empire, some of the other shows, you'll see that black people are really advancing today, because in the 70s, we didn't have a lot of black shows. There weren't a lot of black shows on TV. We had Good Times. Good Times was about a family living in the projects in Chicago, and the father always being out of work, the mother kind of keeping the family together. So from that time until the 80s, things started becoming a little bit better. Eddie Murphy came on the scene through Saturday Night Live, then he started making his own movies. And Eddie Murphy really did a lot to change the whole environment of black Hollywood, and black people started making a lot of money in Hollywood. We just had the recent death of our brother Muhammad Ali. What can we say about him? Great boxer, really personable individual, and there was 20,000 people at his funeral. It was a very touching memorial that they did for him, and we look at his life and we ask questions. What was it like in 1968 when he decided to not join the military, when he went for the draft and they drafted him, and he decided that he would go to prison and lose his boxing title, lose millions of dollars. This was at the prime of his life. This is after he beat Sonny Liston, and he was the champion of the world. At this point, he was undefeated. So what did he risk? He risked going to prison. He risked losing his title. He risked millions of dollars. But the beauty for me was that there were people like Bill Russell, who played for the Boston Celtics in the NBA. There was Jim Brown, who played for the Cleveland Browns football. There was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at the time in 1968. He was playing for UCLA. So a lot of people in the 60s came to his aid and stood by him. Even Joe Frazier, one of the top boxers at this time, who took his title when it was vacant, gave him money and befriended him. So the 60s was a very different time for the black community. And the 60s, we also lost a lot of our revolutionary soldiers. We lost Malcolm X in 1965. We lost Medgar Evers in 1963. We lost Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968. We lost Fred Hampton in 1968. We lost Bunchy Carter in 1969. So a lot of things were going on. A lot of experimentation was going on. They were experimenting with black Tuskegee Airmen. They put syphilis and gonorrhea in their bodies from 1930 to 1970 and did not tell them. They called this experiment bad blood. So one of the things when we talk about, my big thing is about legacy. What is your legacy? Muhammad Ali, yes, he was a great boxer, but my question is, why did so many black men and women join the military after 1968? Did we forget that we were at war with white America? It's an unpronounced war. It's an undeclared war. The things that they've done to the black community and are still doing to the black community, the prison industrial complex. Since the 1980s, they've built over 20 prisons in California. California has the highest prison rate, the second highest prison rate in the world next to China. And we're just talking about the state of California. So my question about the joining the military, if Muhammad Ali felt that black men should not go 10,000 miles away and fight against people who never discriminated against black people. In 1968, black people couldn't eat at lunch counters. Black people could not ride the bus. Black people were going through all different kind of things. We just had 5 years prior to that, we had the March on Washington. 1960, I want to say 67 or no, 1963. The same year of the March on Washington, 3 months after the March on Washington, they bombed this church in Alabama and 4 young girls were killed. So at this time, when Muhammad Ali took that stand, there was a lot going on in America. So why did we, and this is a question that we have to ask ourselves today, why do we leave the movement when we get a small game? Why do we leave the movement if a few of the people are assassinated? We had Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana initiating the United States of Africa. Just like you have the United States of America, you have 50 states all under one constitution. Kwame Nkrumah decided to have him and some other great people, Malcolm X being part of it, wanted to start the United States of Africa, where Europe, especially the United States, England, France, Spain, did not want the United States of Africa. Because why? Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth. I read something where the cell phone, there's a chip for the cell phone that comes out of the Congo. And without this chip, the cell phones wouldn't work. So when you talk about gold, when you talk about diamonds, when you talk about, and we've seen movies like Blood Diamond and some others and Hotel Rwanda. We've seen movies, we've seen documentaries about all that is taking place today. So today we've got to ask ourselves, we are in 2016. 50 years ago, black people were not allowed to go to the university. 1966. The National Guard had to usher black men and women at some of the universities in Little Rock, Arkansas, and some of the others. And so today, 51 years later, we have so many black PhDs, black people with master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, economics, education, political science, all these things. We've just had a black president for 2 terms. It hasn't changed anything. So what do? We rally behind a black president. When this president, Barack Hussein Obama, whose father was a Muslim, his mother married 2 Muslims, one from Kenya, his father, when I don't know if he died or they got divorced or whatever, but I know that she married a man from Indonesia. But at any rate, Obama as the president for 2 terms for 8 years did not address issues that affect the black community. When Trayvon Martin was killed by I forgot the term they use for he's not a police officer, some type of, what do they call that? Neighborhood watch. Huh? Neighborhood watch, thank you. Neighborhood watch. When he was killed by Neighborhood Watch, President Obama said that could have been my son. But he didn't address how easy it is for a black youth to be killed by whomever, whether it's a police officer, whether it's And the guy who actually killed Trayvon Martin, his father was a judge, or his father is a judge today. And recently, George Zimmerman tried to sell the gun that he killed Trayvon Martin with on eBay or one of those entities. Just a stab in the heart to those of us. Not only did we lose a young man with full of potential, with a great grade point average, on his way to college, never had been in any trouble, no juvenile record. This man has the audacity to try to sell the gun. So how do we respond to this? We don't want to be reactionary like the riots in 65 in Watts or in Newark in 1967 or in Detroit. We don't want to be reactionary where we go and destroy property like we did in Los Angeles in 1992. Then they raised the taxes and it didn't do anything. Yes, you let off a little bit of steam, but what we want to do today is we want to study our history. We want to study the slave trade. We want to study what the slave trade was like in America with the cotton industry, or what it was like in the Caribbean, Brazil, Panama, Jamaica with the sugarcane industry. We want to study that the sugarcane industry, the average life of a slave was 15 years because the work was so hard and it was so congested in a small period of time. Whereas cotton, the average life expectancy on the plantation was 60 years. Also on the cotton plantation, the women and the men were able to intermix. They were able to marry. Whereas on the sugarcane plantations, a lot of it was all men. So there was no reproduction. Also on the cotton plantation, the slave master, the white slave master, was raping the women and creating a lot of children by that. So we want to be, it doesn't make sense for us to have all this information. They show us movies. Roots just came out maybe a week or two ago, the second Roots. And so what do? We watch this movie. So some young people who parents didn't tell them about slavery, they saw Roots. So I don't know about them, but I saw Roots in 1977 when I was in the 7th grade, 77, 78, and I was so hurt because I didn't know about slavery. I didn't know the way that the whites treated blacks. I didn't know the inhumanity. So I'm curious to understand or to hear from the youth of today how it was for them when they saw Roots. Did they, recently we've had movies like 12 Years a Slave. We've had movies like The Help. We've had movies like The Butler. And I don't see a outpour of emotion and passion among the people in America. I don't know about in the other countries in Brazil or Panama or Jamaica or in other places, or even in Africa, West Africa, East Africa, Central Africa. But I know that it was like we just watched it as a movie and that was it. And for me, that's not good enough. It's not good enough for us as we all go to school and we're made to study history, mostly U.S. history, or when we get to college, world history. But the problem is that they always exclude Africa from this history. They exclude Africa from mathematics, Africa from science, Africa from technology, Africa from astronomy, astrology, all these different sciences that the Europeans stole from Africa in the first place. So Malcolm once said that you can't know yourself until you know your history, till you know where you came from. So one of the things that we want to do on Sunuker Radio is to go back. We want to study what happened in the Congo with the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. We want to study the movement in Kenya, the Mau Mau movement, and how they were able to get the Europeans out. We want to study South Africa and apartheid. Many people will smile and say apartheid is over, let's go home. No, apartheid still exists. It might be under a different name, just like Jim Crow still exists. It might be under a different name. One of the problems now that we have is we segregate ourselves. In Los Angeles, in the inner cities, you have people who don't even go downtown to the garment district, to the wholesale district. There's people who live in Los Angeles and they've never been to the beach. They don't know about the $1 billion garment district. We've got to start educating our children. We have to tell them who they are. We have to tell them about the great African empires, the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire, the Ghana Empire, Timbuktu. We have to be able to tell them about the pyramids in Egypt. But we also have to be honest. We have to also tell them that the first slave owners were African. Pharaoh was an African. He enslaved the children of Israel. So we are not here to talk as if African people are victims. No, we're here to come up with solutions so that we can examine where are we today? Where should we go? We go to the university and we get a degree and we have to go ask somebody else for a job. Well, when the United States was founded, before there was a university system, people came here and they started businesses. And then some of those businesses became bigger entities, and some of them they end up being bought out by corporations. But today, when you look in the black community, the black community is a gold mine. One of our goals, my specific goal for our movement, is to put supermarkets in the major cities. The first city that I want to start with is Los Angeles. I think Los Angeles is one of the most important cities within the United States because of Hollywood, because of a number of things, the weather, and you know, the California sunshine. But when you look at Los Angeles, it's one of the largest populations of black people within the United States. Chicago being one, New York City being one. I don't know the history of Chicago and New York City, but I know about Los Angeles, Watts, and Compton, and we don't have one black supermarket. Yet, the Lakers have been there since the 1960s, and they've been a black millionaire in Los Angeles playing for the Lakers and now for the Clippers. There was one time the Rams were there. The Rams are moving back. The Raiders were there. So at any given time, and I said this before, at any given time in any major city, there may be 100 black millionaires. Why 100 black millionaires? Because you have the NBA, the National Basketball Association. You have the NFL. And the NBA, by the way, is 75% black. The NFL, the National Football League, you'll find those in the major cities. I forgot the roster, how many people are on the team, maybe 150 or something like that, but a good 70% of them are African American. Then you have the rap music, you have singers, you have baseball, you have the university system with your football program, with your basketball program, with your track program, with your tennis program. So black people generate a lot of money in this country. So why are we not sustaining that dollar? How can this affect our brothers and sisters on the African continent? When we stabilize, I believe, it's my personal belief, that when we stabilize ourselves here in the United States, we can help our brothers and sisters all over the world. So we want you to read books. We want you to ask questions. We want you to cross-examine. If I'm saying something that is not correct, then call me to it, because that will only help me. That will help me to be more efficient in my speech. I'm not an expert. I'm an activist. I'm somebody who's passionately driven to see our people free. In 1863, President Lincoln signed Emancipation Proclamation, and to this day, we don't know what it means to be free. We haven't come up with an agenda that said this is what we should do. We should get some of our brothers and sisters in school, some of our brothers and sisters in agriculture, some of our sisters and brothers in different fields, so that we can stabilize our community. So these are the things that we want to do today. We want to have supermarkets. We want to have restaurants. We want to have print shops. We want to have newspapers. We want to be an independent people within the United States, so that the $1 trillion that is that's coming into the black community, we will be able to keep it there. So we're going to need everybody's help, everybody's participation, everybody's suggestion, everybody's input. This is about Bob Marley. This is about Frankie Beverly and Mays saying we are one. This is about Muhammad Ali, the great boxer. This is about Jim Brown, the football player. This is about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. This is about Kobe Bryant. This is about the late great Michael Jackson, the late great Prince. This is about James Brown. This is about a great black community. Can you imagine in 1920 we had in Tulsa, Oklahoma, what they called Black Wall Street? Why did they call it Black Wall Street? Because there was people on the stock market, there was lawyers, there was doctors, there was engineers. A black man owned a bus company. And this is what, 24 years before the bus boycott in Selma, Alabama, a black man owned his bus company. So what is the significance of Black Wall Street? One of the significance of Black Wall Street is Tulsa, Oklahoma had a city population in 1920 of 12,000 residents, all black. In May 31st, 1920, 3,000 of the residents of Tulsa, Oklahoma were murdered by the United States government from May 31st to June the 1st in 12 hours. So recently we saw a killing spree that took place in Florida where over 51 people were murdered. And they said that that was the worst tragedy in the history of the United States. No, Tulsa, Oklahoma, where 3,000 blacks were murdered in 12 hours is the worst tragedy. But because they are the ones on the media who will tell you these statistics and we have no way to rebut it, these are one of the reasons why we have this radio program, why we have this online program, and we intend to expand. We intend to put radio stations in different cities. The radio stations that we now have in our communities, they're not ran by us. They're ran by corporations. McDonald's decides what you put on TV, or on the radio program. Burger King decides. Seagram's Gin decides. Walmart and all these people. So what we're doing is we're selling out to the highest bidder. So when we decide that we're going to take Walmart's $1 million or Nike's $1 million, they say we don't want Ice Cube on the radio. We don't want Public Enemy on the radio. So we have to abide by that. So we are going to be an independent radio. Eventually we're going to play music, but mostly talk, because we have enough entertainment. We have enough TV. There's not a lack for BET and 106 in Park or whatever. We need to talk. We need to understand. We need to know why in the 1960s all of our leaders were assassinated. Because there's a difference between a murder and assassination. A murder, somebody bumps into each other and they get in a fight and one kills the other. Assassination is when a person is followed, a person is analyzed, and it's the strategic planning because this person is deemed a threat. This person is deemed powerful. This person is deemed resourceful enough to get everybody together. So we have to find a way to neutralize them. So that's where assassination comes. There's also assassination of character, where Jesse Jackson had got a woman pregnant, and so after he got this woman pregnant, and she, by the way, she was a black woman with a PhD. Now, usually black women with PhD don't accidentally get pregnant. Everything that they do is very calculated. But the media or the intelligence community found a woman that they know what Jesse liked. They slid her under him, and he fell prey to it. We've got to wake up. We've got to stop selling our people out. We have black people working in the prisons as correctional officers. They know what's going on. They see how the guards instigate fights when everything is peaceful to keep it going. Why? Because these correctional officers value their job. And if there's cohesion in the prison and the inmates stop fighting each other and killing each other, then many of the correctional officers would be without a job. Just like the United States. The United States creates wars with other countries so the military stays strong. The military stays alert. The military stays sharp. They stay engaged. We have got to stop allowing people to manipulate us. But this takes self-reflection. This takes critical thinking, critical analysis. This takes responsibility that we say that we're going to stop going to prison. We're going to stop failing in school. We're going to make it harder for them to keep us down. They're going to do what they do. They're going to try their best. They're going to try their best to keep us down. But we have to stand strong. Once again, we thank you. My name is Amir, Abdul, Jaleel, and I thank you for joining us at Sunuker FM Radio. We are planning some major events. We want to do documentaries, we want to do books, we want to do radio programs. We're going to have lawyers on our program. We're going to have professors, We're going to have people who just did 21 years in prison, 23 years in prison. So we're going to do a lot of things because once again, as I said earlier, we are looking for solutions. We're not just here to be crying about what happened in the past. Those things hurt us and they're hurting us today, but we're looking for a solution. We need you. We need your support. Please tune in. Please have your questions. Please have your analysts. If you have somebody that you think that we could benefit on our show, let us know. We'll be glad to hear from you, and we will see you soon because we will be doing this weekly, if not more. Thank you so much.